these are the things that in the moment, I'm like, my life is over. I'm out thousands of dollars. My life is over. It is not over. Yeah. You'll always have the memory.
What'd you do? How'd you get rid of it?
I finally convinced the company where no one had last names to come and pick the thing up.
Hello, and welcome back to the Seriously Connected podcast. I'm Christina O'Donnell, and I'm taking over the podcast this month, and I invite you to take it over next month or the month after that. And for more information on that, be sure to check out our show notes. But first, I want to tell you about what's going on in this week's episode. We are going to be talking about how to navigate business and friendship. We're going to talk about what it feels like to be a CEO, but still feel imposter syndrome. We're also going to discuss some of the biggest failures we've ever experienced in business and how we were able to move through them. And the we I am mentioning includes Marcella Hammer. Marcella is the CEO of the Palette Community. She is also one of the women nominated by the Albany Business Review as a woman on the rise. But before we get into that interview, I've got a hot take for you. And here it is. If you are a leader and or you want to be a leader and you are not utilizing the power of podcasting, you are failing. And people are laughing at you because you are not connecting with your audience. And who's not being dumb? Vice President Kamala Harris. Because she was just on the Call Her Daddy podcast. And if you haven't heard of the Call Her Daddy podcast, one, that's okay, because it's kind of a very specific demographic, but it is a powerful demographic of a lot of women who are all voters and probably want to vote and very much care about women's rights. So it isn't surprising to me that Kamala Harris would say yes to being on this podcast and that this podcast wouldn't want to include Kamala Harris as a guest on the show. For some context, the podcast has been described as raunchy, sex positive, and it's also mega popular. It is known as the most listened to podcast by women, and they call themselves the Daddy Gang. I had someone explain that to me once, and it meant like daddy meant like you're in a power position, because I didn't get what that meant at first, but now I know. So some of the past episode titles of this show include Threesomes, Toxic Men, and OnlyFans. That's my hot take. If you want to be a powerful person, then you've got to be utilizing the power of podcasting. And if you're not, then okay, cool. Don't do it. Never do it. Stay away from podcasting. All right. I have not yet listened to this podcast, that being said. So that is one of the, on my list of to-dos. And if you have listened to it, I would love to know what you think. I would love to know what your major takeaways are. I can't wait to hear about it. I heard that they talked that it's a 40-minute conversation that covers Harris's upbringing, the rollback of abortion rights, the high cost of housing, and, quote, Republican attacks on childless cat ladies, end quote. So not necessarily hard hitting, but definitely interesting. And there's going to be a lot of conversation about policy. So anyway, if you've listened to it, let me know what you think. And if you haven't listened to it, listen to it and let's talk about it later. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm Christina O'Donnell. I am the CEO of Bright-Sided Podcasting, and joining me today is Marcella Hammer. I never use your last name.
Which is a shame, because
right?
I'm just one initial away from MC Hammer.
It's hammer time. This is like the first full episode of Seriously Connected.
Ooh.
Oh, wow.
I feel it already.
Do you feel connected?
To you, yes.
Aww.
To the world, absolutely.
Wow. You know what? It's because our freckles match.
They do.
But for real, we're changing this podcast to make it it's a takeover show. And my business, Bright Sided Podcasting, is taking over the podcast this week so that I, the CEO and founder of Bright Sided Podcasting, can tell you a little bit more about myself, my mission, my business. And my hope is that you'll listen to this and hopefully, connect with me. Perhaps I'll share little bits of wisdom through the interviews that I'm going to have with brilliant people like Marcella Hammer, the CEO of Palette, businesswoman extraordinaire, and also just a really great connector. I think that's probably the thing that you might do the best.
I think you're right. And it was very unexpected for that to be something in my life that resonated with who I am. I never expected anything to happen the way it did. But connecting in particular as an introvert, a professional extrovert, but an actual introvert, that I gain more energy hiding from everyone than I do exposing myself, but not in that way.
So, well, I'd love to understand, 'cause I think nothing that has happened to us in our lives at this point maybe had been planned, right? Which is crazy because I planned stuff and this is not where I thought I was going to end up. Sometimes I like to think of myself as an unlikely CEO, but maybe I am a likely CEO. I just hadn't seen myself out there before. And so hopefully through this podcast, more and more women can see the different types of women business owners that there are, or women working in business that there are, because there are so many different personalities, backgrounds, people, colors. There's just a lot going on in the business world, and it's really wonderful to be able to showcase them here on this show. So let's talk about your business journey.
I'm happy to, but I want to circle back to something that you just said about yourself, which is not thinking that you would be a CEO and what does a CEO even look like?
Yeah.
And I need to share a little story with you. I met some young adult women about a month ago, and I told them that my job is CEO. I'm a CEO.
Yeah.
And this young woman looked at me and she says, I've never met a CEO before. Wow. And you're a woman, you're a young woman. Wow, thank you. In conclusion, I think the reality is that we have so many more examples in business of men who are CEOs and men who are in leadership, so much so that perhaps we're just programmed as women, whoever we are, to think that we don't belong there, that we don't deserve those letters because we aren't something that fits into a box that was created by men. And here we are just trying to line ourselves up with that concept of what we think we're supposed to be versus what we are. We're never going to be like them.
My takeaway here is don't pretend to be something that you're not, to be in a position that you're already qualified for and you just might not know it. And I called myself an unlikely CEO because when I first became a CEO, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even use that word. I just was I'm starting my own company and it feels silly to write CEO on LinkedIn because I don't know what I'm doing. So I hired a business coach and I failed a lot and I learned a lot. And I feel like that is what comes of you when you start a company, start a business. And there is a lot of failure and there's a lot of coming back from failure. And I really do think people who are successful in business are people who just haven't given up. They've just hung in there the longest. And there's also a lot of figuring out what works for your personality. So you mentioned that you are an introvert, but a professional extrovert, which I totally relate to. And I also believe because I've seen you step in front of crowds and not be scared and talk to people and hold my hand through the process. And people look at me and think, oh, you used to be a TV news reporter. Why does standing in front of a crowd bother you? And I'm because when I was standing in front of a virtual crowd before, there was no people, there was just a camera. I can make an inanimate object my friend. It's more difficult for me to see all of the faces. And I also feel the energy of the people when I'm in front of the crowd. And then I start to feel nervous because I feel their nerves for me.
It's just exposure.
Yeah. Exposure therapy.
Torment yourself real good. And that's really what it was for me is I ended up in these very uncomfortable situations in public speaking as a student when I was in college. And I guess I just kept going. And the more you do it, the easier it gets.
Yeah.
I guess. But I love that you mentioned that I can absolutely stand up in front of a crowd, no problem. But here at Palette, last year when I got married, there was a surprise bridal shower for me. And let me just tell you, I had to go to the bathroom about 700 times to hide, including immediately when the surprise happened. I said, "Oh, I'll be right back. I have to pee." No, I was just overwhelmed.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I can be so powerful in the moment as a speaker on stage in front of an audience. But I think like a lot of individuals, sometimes when the focus is on me, it can be really uncomfortable. And I have to really work on accepting it. Unless someone's giving me an award or cash, in which case I'm very comfortable.
Okay, that works for you.
Mm-hmm.
I would stand there right next to you to,
Yes.
accept. Let's talk a little bit about your business journey. And maybe we can share a little bit about how we came into each other's lives. True Crime Podcast Club. Yeah.
It's a good story. Yeah, I love that story. And so I think we need to start there.
Okay.
Especially because this is about connections and how they happen. And I know genuinely with me, especially when you first start networking or when you come into the business world, you think you have to have a business card. There are like things that you're supposed to do. Like you're supposed to do this. You're supposed to go to the chamber mixers and you do these things. In reality, what I found in my business journey is that the people that I would meet at most places that were directly for networking, it wouldn't last. The relationships wouldn't last. It would be like an email here or, a direct ask here, like, do you want to buy my insurance? No, sir, I do not want to buy your insurance. It was so much more transactional and like, you scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. And what I'm always looking for is a friendship that could maybe turn into something else or a connection with someone that has shared values, really anything. Maybe they have cool socks. Maybe they have like an iconic ponytail and need to be told. My point is with you and I, when we met, it was random. I was meeting a friend for coffee at Mrs. London's. You happened to be sitting next to her, chit-chatting away. And were you talking about true crime podcasts?
So at the time, I was producing a true crime podcast, and I believe we had just won a podcasting award for that show. And so I was really excited about it and also a little bit nervous. Being in the podcasting business, you're always looking for exposure and to share what you're working on. And whenever I bring up true crime, people are always like, ooh. Tell me more. I was sharing with Jane. Yeah. Jane Chen. Mm-hmm. And then she was like, you need to meet my friend Marcella. And I was still kind of new to town. And you had a true crime podcast club. And you were like, you should come to my club. And and then you were like, you started, I think, recruiting me. I think we started like kind of dating.
Yeah.
Like I like didn't know we were dating, but I kind of knew that you were like,
I was
interested.
Friend courting you. As we must do. You can't just go make friends with anyone.
I could tell.
Got to like lay the groundwork.
I was like, I think that there's something here, but I'm not gonna like give it away.
I know you got it. You were playing hard to get, and that's okay.
I did, but you knew just what to say to reel me in eventually, and I got reeled in. And I did things with my business that I wasn't expecting to do with the support of you. And it was wonderful.
I love that you say reeled in. That's such a evocative verb and not one I really agree with. I think that what's so cool about Palette and what we do here and kind of what I do is instead of like a reel, like a fishing reel, it's like a magnetism.
Oh, but that's a great way to frame it. Yeah.
And because it's not like you go to the grocery store and it's like purely functional, like a place that's purely functional. I think what Palette represents for me and what it's come to represent is the potential for connection in business to create success.
Yes.
You and I meeting was just kind of like a wonderful, happy circumstance. The coincidence was that both of us were in some form of business startup. And there's so much commonality there where you don't know what you're doing. You write down CEO for the first time and you think you're making it up. In reality, everybody makes it up. Yeah. Sorry, man. I'm telling their secret.
I was energetically drawn to Marcella. And after I met you and we talked like about all of these really deep and important things that have happened to us in our lives. And I just kind of realized like, hey, this is a good person. I moved back to town. I was still new to like my own town, but like it wasn't like, it wasn't new to you because you'd been here. There was something about you that I was like, I feel like I can open up to this person. I can share my dreams with this person and they're not going to laugh and they're going to take them seriously. You meet people who say that they like want to help you, but like you did the actions. Like you didn't talk the talk, you walked the walk. And I noticed that by how you also treated people around you and how people reacted when they saw you and they met you. And I just observed and I was like, I would be lucky to be in this person's orbit. So I think magnetize is a better way of saying it.
That is so kind of you. Thank you. I feel like I'm doing the right thing. Like everything that I'm doing consciously and unconsciously, that's such lovely feedback that I think we all need to hear at one point.
Yeah. Well, it's so true. I don't think I've ever met somebody when I like bring up your name and they're like, oh yeah, she's great. I love her. Like she's a real one.
Use my last name though? That's the best part.
It's always Marcella. There's no like, that's why I was like, I don't even, what? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like I don't know another Marcella, just you. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm working on iconic. I'm getting there slowly.
So what's gone on with your business journey lately?
Golly gee.
No biggie.
Really so much. So, my whole journey into being an entrepreneur and into small business feels like it happened by accident. Like you said about you, it was never really that intention that I would be doing anything like this. In the past 5 years, Palette opened in 2019. So November 2019 is when we opened the first co-working spaces here. And I was coming into that position after closing my own business at the end of 2018. So I'd been operating a brick and mortar nail salon for about 3.5 years and failed so big. It was amazing. I'm going to say it like that because of sort of a mirroring effect that I want to do. And something you said before is that you've like had so many failures in just the past year. And me too. Every single one of them is so intrinsically valuable to who I've become as a person, as a leader, as a business human. And I wouldn't trade anything for it. So with my salon, I lost a bunch of money, which is really where I see that the failure traditionally defined coming in. Like, yeah, I lost money. But I kid you not, I had a meeting with someone, a Zoom meeting with someone not yesterday, because that was Sunday, last week. And she recognized me from my salon, which closed in 2018. Like, there are kids going to kindergarten who weren't born when she knew me and remembered so fondly the impact, the experience, and so much positivity. So I think like my lesson and my takeaway from that is what feels like a failure teaches us and isn't always a failure because it can create this positive impact that continues to show up in waves like an ocean years later in my life. So it's more about this kind of bringing it back to networking and connection. It's about the long game. It's about meeting people like you and I did. And whether it's organically or you're at a business thing, finding what's in common and letting that be the focus of the conversation, the relationship, the friendship. Maybe you are in similar fields, you want to do business together, but for it to really last, I believe that it needs to be authentic and it needs to be genuine. And that doesn't always happen in a quick conversation. Real connection isn't transactional, is really what I'm getting at.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to challenge you a little bit.
Get me.
So 2 things. I do think that sometimes it's still transactional just because there's like this flow of energy, like this flow of, there's still some sort of exchange that happens. In addition, almost all of my friendships, I always think, how can I bring value to this person's life? Like, how can I help them? And I think that sometimes gets murky with business, right? Because sometimes you have to have hard conversations or you have to sometimes be in a situation where you're like, I really care about this person as a friend, but also I have to send this email and I'm scared to do it. I don't know how they're going to receive it. I am literally shaking in my boots and I've got to do it. And I hope that we can still find a place to move forward, right? Like these are real things that happen to people. And there are ways that you can still move forward, but it's really scary when it comes, like there's a line with friendship and business. And how do you walk it? Because you walk it masterfully.
Thank you.
I'm learning from you.
Thank you. I don't always walk it masterfully. I've absolutely made huge, massive errors and mistakes. I probably continue to do so every day, which is fine. It's okay. We're not supposed to be like perfect human beings.
Yeah.
There's no such thing. I think it changes with the person that I'm interacting with sometimes, but a lot of it is kind of managing my expectations. And I guess that's in every relationship we have in life. I always want to give everyone the benefit of the doubt that they're only going to act toward me in the way that I would act toward them, which would be positive, giving, open, collaborative, and giving someone an opportunity to be that way and accepting the consequences as whatever they are is helpful. I should probably talk to my therapist about this question this week, because my first instinct was to just say, you don't have to accept what others are giving to you. So, in the case that you have to write a difficult email or have a hard conversation, honestly, the way that I've learned to do it is I prepare a lot. If it's an email, like, you write the drafts, you figure it out, you get in the mindset. For me, a lot of it is about that mindset of expectation of like, what do I want the results of this to be? With the friendships, it's easy for me because I'm an introvert and I don't accept social invitations very often. So I don't have to manage those friendships in the real world as much as like if I were an extrovert and super social and like ready to go out for drinks all the time. But at the same time, like, I think it's completely authentic to who I am, that I can have these sort of more quiet, focused relationships and friendships with people all the time. And they're so super genuine, but also not allowing my feelings to get hurt because I like have some expectation of how something is going to go. And when it doesn't line up with that, or when a behavior doesn't line up with that, I no longer have my feelings hurt.
What helps you not have your feelings hurt?
The cold deadness of my 45-year-old heart, mostly.
Your heart is not completely
I'm
cold
kidding.
and dead. I know it's not.
I'm kidding.
It's a little mushy sometimes.
It's super squishy, especially if dogs are nearby.
Yes.
It's really hard to answer that because it's not like I become an inauthentic person and just shut down or something like that. It's more of being able to listen to what someone says without making it personal.
Yes.
And that can be really hard.
Yeah.
Really hard.
There's two things that you have said that remind me of a mutual friend of ours, Hannah Smith. And she...
The goat, you mean?
Yes, the goat. The author of the book, I Am Enough. And there's a couple things that you have said that like remind me of Hannah-isms, like things from her book. And I'm like wondering if like, is that a Hannah-ism?
It might be. I mean, we have that redhead DNA bond.
Yes.
She and I.
Yeah. Being able to take criticism without taking it personally. And sometimes something that she has taught me is when your gut feels like you want your response to be defensive, like if you feel like in your heart, like I now want to clap back, what you should say instead is, tell me more. Tell me why. Can you explain that? And I use this in my regular life. I also am a professor at Skidmore. And the other day I was helping the students preparing for a test that we have on Thursday. I showed them a picture of the test so they could read it, but I didn't want to like send it to them. So they would have some ideas of what they needed to like really get clear on. And then I was going to like do some editing on as well, just to show them like what to do. And one of the students raised his hand and he was like, hey, can you send me that? And my like immediate response was, dude, no, I'm not sending you the test. I'm not gonna let you download this stuff and practice beforehand. Like, no. So that was what I thought in my head. Anyway, I just like the student had missed an assignment. And so like I had like started to like make this framework of them in my head. But instead I pulled from my Hannah playbook and I was like, can you like tell me more? Like, tell me more. And he was like, well, it will just be easier for me to follow along in the editing if I can also see it on the board, like while you're doing it. And I was like, oh, well, I can just like put it here on my screen and edit over here. And like the whole class was thankful and relieved. And I was like, wow. Like instead of me assuming that he wanted just to like kind of cheat on an upcoming test, that was not at all what he was planning. Like he just wanted to be able to learn better. And because he said something and I didn't like go straight to attack mode and make a assumption, I was able to help him learn better and the rest of the class who were so thankful, right? Like,
I love that. And it reminds me of one of the greatest moments of lesson learning in business that I've ever had. I was managing a team when I lived in San Francisco.
This week's serious business lesson is all about the importance of sharing your wins. I keep seeing this clip circulating on social media about like how many people would you call to vent to if something often happened? And then it's how many people would you call to tell them if something amazing happened to you? And the consensus is that you actually have more people to complain to than you have to celebrate with. And I'd love to know what you feel about that, because I totally fall in this category. I feel like sometimes I don't want to like boast or brag about anything positive that happens in my life. But I am making an exception because in this serious business lesson, we need to talk about our wins and celebrate our wins. And Bright Sided Media has some big wins to tell you about. And I'm gonna tell you about them. So here they are. First off, Bright Sided has 2 shows that are finalists in an industry awards platform, and it's the Signal Awards. And so we just found out this week that our shows A Place of Yes, which is a podcast about channeling grief for good with host Heather Straughter. That podcast is a finalist in the self-help and self-improvement category. We've got some like big competition. We are up against like Mel Robbins, who we love, but like also wow, we are up against some heavy hitters that have been in the industry for a long time. Also, our show, The Other 3 Years, hosted by Olympian Christy Wagner, which is about the journey of being an Olympic athlete and all of the things that you have to do and give up and compromise to make this dream a reality for yourself. And that is being an Olympian and or being like an award-winning Olympian. So that show is a finalist in the sports documentary category, and also the athletes shaping culture. And to quote Christy after we texted about this, it's sick. It's really sick. It's awesome. And I am so proud of these hosts. I'm proud of the teams that have worked on those shows, and you know who you are. Congratulations, Bright Sided. We have done something really awesome, and the fact that we are finalists in these categories is amazing. That being said, you have a chance to help us win the Listener's Choice Awards. So if you wouldn't mind taking 2 seconds out of your day to click the link in the show notes and vote for The Other 3 Years and A Place of Yes in their show categories, we could also win some Listener's Choice Awards as well. Thank you for listening to my TED Talk about sharing your wins with people, because I do think people like to hear about them as well.
And this team, they would have to like go out on missions and brand it. It was like a brand activation sort of thing.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was epic.
Okay.
Like Red Bull without the red or the bull, sort of.
Okay.
And
I was going to say, was it associated with a church?
No, it was associated with legal drugs that are not really regulated and are sold in convenience stores.
Cool.
So, I had this employee who showed up and she looked a mess. She was like in pajama pants and just was like all not looking herself. And my corporate response immediately was to address that. It was like, I got to address the situation. We're going to write her up, all of those things. I had the benefit of some time while she was out, like in the truck doing whatever she needed to do. When she came back, instead of calling her out and saying, this is a dress code violation and, this is not appropriate, I have to write you up. Instead, I said, hey, come and sit down with me for a second. I just want to chat with you. And we sat on a ledge outside of the building. And I said, I know this may be kind of hard to hear, but you just don't seem like yourself right now. This isn't what you usually show up to work in. This isn't like your usual demeanor. Is everything okay? Do you need to talk about anything? What came out of her mouth are things that are like so unbelievable. I can't even repeat here, but she was going through a very traumatic time. And had I gone with the first instinct, same thing as you said, like this is how we solve problems. I'm a manager. She might have quit. It wouldn't have addressed her as a human being and her experience as a human being. And for me, it was like such a wake up call to say, okay, this is the problem. This is what the playbook says to do. But by doing this, I have this whole new level of connection and this real lesson for me and how I want to lead as I move forward in my life. I'd rather take the time and sit down with someone who has the audacity to wear pajamas in public, which so many people do these days, and say, are you okay? And it really can make a difference.
Yeah. Where do we go from there?
So many places. Something that I also love talking about with you is sports and athletics and the connection that comes from that. And you're just so cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm not really in sports right now.
Yeah.
But I do try to move my body a little bit every day. It is hard when you work in the podcasting business because you'd be sitting a lot. Sometimes you're editing a lot. Sometimes you're sitting in chairs talking to someone else. And it's all important things, but it's also important to move. And so yeah, I do. I try to move, and I try to not get mad at myself for not moving enough. I just try. I was an athlete when I was in college and in high school. And you know what's hilarious to me is I did every sport almost, and I was only okay at most of them until I finally found the right fit for me, which I just think is such a gift when you have struggled, and then all of a sudden you're like, wow, I'm great at this. And then you're like in this thing. Like for me, it was rowing, but I ran, I did soccer, I tried to do basketball because I'm tall. I was kind of good at volleyball, but eye-hand coordination's not really my thing.
Same.
There's just so many things that I'm tennis. Oh, I'm not good.
Same.
But I was good at rowing, and it really helped me.
I think I have kind of two places I'm going with this. And
yeah, I feel like you're tossing me something.
I'm tossing you.
I'm missing it.
Yeah. The casting the line and the fishing.
Oh, but I thought we weren't reeling. Where's the magnet?
Well, now I'm reeling.
Oh, okay.
It was magnetism. Okay. And now it's force.
Okay.
I think it's important to know that the majority of women who are CEOs or who are in the C-suite are athletes.
Oh, really?
Played sports as a kid, continue to be lifelong athletes. And there's a very strong connection between staying active in life and success. The other thing that I think is amazing about your story, and that kind of reflects to our business stories, is you tried so many different things until finding the sport that was the right fit for you. Yeah. And when you say you were great at it, it doesn't mean that you weren't sweating and working hard and having really hard days.
Yeah.
Really big challenges. It just means that for whatever reason, that was like a fit for who you are as an individual human being. Yeah. That's what's so cool about you with your sport. It's so cool about you with Bright-Sided. And, I feel that very much is the same for me. I've tried all of these different things in my life. And the most successful I've ever been in career is when I get to show up as myself, which is palette.
Yeah.
I just get to show up every day and be nice to people and connect to them and listen to what they're really saying instead of thinking of what I'm going to say to what they're saying. Like, I never have something in mind before I answer. Just listen.
I have seen you do this with people, and I often wonder, like, how is she so present? Like, because I've seen you do that, and then I've seen you, like, then you're like suddenly so present with me, and I'm like, because it takes a lot, especially if you're an introverted person, to give the space to connect with someone so deeply like that. But then I also see you be like, hermit. I'm done. Bye-bye.
Time to shut down for the day. Like
yes,
a robot.
I have witnessed that as well. And to me, that just shows that you're being authentically you, and it's just your battery needs to be recharged. So
it's so funny because for so many years, I was able to work at a pace that was so high and so many hours and so much focus. And I just couldn't sustain it, and I can't sustain it. And so I'm glad that you see me like exhausted now, because it means that I'm not somehow pushing through trying to be something that I'm not.
I mean, I think that there's days, but I think that I do. I see you working in a dark room by yourself.
Okay, that was just today.
No one around.
Okay, just kidding. It's every Monday.
Hiding from humanity while you just take care of business.
Mm-hmm.
So that is an important part of it. You're multifaceted.
Yes. And also knowing that I don't need to be punished for needing to take that space.
No.
This is what allows me to, make my brain work better.
So what is Palette these days? How would you define it?
I would define Palette as a co-working space and community that has a physical location in Saratoga Springs. And we're all about bringing women together, but also anyone who want to level up in career and life. And it's through collaboration, connection, community. That's how it happens. Mm-hmm. So Palette is a place you can go to. You can go and work during the day. You can host an event there. You can have a meeting. But it's also a network, which is hard to describe. But we do have an app, which makes it look like a thing that exists in the world, when in reality, in the olden days, it was like, what, a Rolodex? The youngsters were like, I don't know, a Rolodex. You don't know what it is either, do you?
No, I know what a Rolodex is.
I got scared there.
I was trying to think if there was another example of what it might be instead of a Rolodex. I was like, well, I have this one client who has an address book.
Oh, yes. One of those.
Yes. And he's like, let me find out what my Facebook password is.
Is it his little black book?
Yes, it is a little black book. And he's like, under F, finding Facebook. And under E, he's finding
he keeps his
EIN.
passwords in there?
Yes.
He keeps his EIN under E? Part of me celebrates that.
I. Yes. It's all there right where it should be, not to mention the people. And it's all there.
That's amazing.
It's how he organizes things. And he's 85. So, he's not changing, and it's working, and it's a good system for him.
So Palette is pretty much everything and nothing like that all at once.
Yes. It's the modern version of it.
I really see is that people who decide to join Palette, because it's a membership, it's monthly or annual membership, are individuals who are remote workers. They're small business owners. They're solopreneurs. They want to become entrepreneurs. Maybe they have a full-time job now, but there's something inside of them, which I've experienced, and I know you have, that an idea happens and no one can do it like you. No one in the world could make what you can make. And so a lot of the women, we are primarily women who I meet and see join Palette, are people who understand that success doesn't happen in a vacuum, and that we need each other to succeed. We need the network. We need those connections that happen, whether it's potential clients or emotional support or mental health support, or like a gym buddy. Which I saw you and one of your gym buddies today talking about being gym buddies.
Yeah.
But it's really kind of, for me, resonates the fact that in the olden days, it was business and it was personal, and they don't mix. But in reality, especially as women, we can't leave the personal at the door and just go be something else. We have to bring it with us.
I mean, I joined Palette for a number of different reasons, but I was really looking, I was a newer business owner. I'm back in my hometown after many years away, and I'm looking for my people. I'm looking to be around people who aren't going to laugh at my dreams, or who are going to understand me when I say, no, podcasting is my business. It's not a hobby. They're going to understand where my mind is at as I'm trying to, build a new spreadsheet, or I have to have a hard conversation, or I'm doing branding, who knows what it is that I'm doing. But I feel like there's always somebody who I can just look up and ask a question to, or offer an idea and someone can help me. Or if I need to move something, I'm like, hey, could you just lend me a hand and pick something up for me? Or gosh, I need to get my hair done. My hair person canceled on me. Do you know anyone?
In fact, I do.
Her
I
name's
know someone.
Emma. She
Emma's
just did
amazing.
my hair the other day.
She's so good.
I mean, goodness, I found my therapist by talking to somebody in this community.
It really, that's amazing to hear. And that's really what it's all about, is that the needs that you know you have and the needs that you will have that you can't even anticipate are able to be met when you have a powerful network that is aligned with your values. And that's so much how I see Palette. I love and also don't love that so many entrepreneurs have experienced people who laugh at their ideas and are super judgmental and who have, no, you should do this instead. Like those people that, oh, you should do this and you should do that. It is one of those common experiences that entrepreneurs all deal with. And I know for me and for many of them, those people who are the most critical are family members, friends and family members. And that's another big lesson to learn too, is that, you know, we have our friends, we have our family, we have our community. But when it comes time for growth in business, sometimes you need to grow that community, because the people who have supported you since you were a little kid, they may not be in that same place you're in. They don't understand what you're looking at. They see a podcast network and they're like, I don't know. Don't you want to be a doctor? No, I don't. I mean, I have family members who still don't think I have a job. They don't understand what I do. And it's just because, you know, sometimes what an entrepreneur will do doesn't necessarily line up with a doctor, a lawyer, or an ID card on a lanyard. It's just not me. But it's a real job. Family. I promise.
There was something you said earlier today about failure and about how you wouldn't change any of your, like how these failures were all like, you didn't use the word good, but in like use some other word.
Oh, I love them now. I don't remember the word, but they were epic.
Yes. So I want to give space for the failure to also suck.
Oh, it can suck.
Yeah.
It does suck.
Because for me, when crap hits the fan, it goes everywhere. It is not good. There's recovery. Like there is a recovery period. And I don't know if you felt that way with what happened with your nail salon.
Yeah, closing it. Absolutely. Yes. It's super traumatic when you undergo a great failure. And, you know, I think back of my journey with that business, I had so many failure days that almost eclipsed the closing of it, that don't make it easier to bear, but at least contextualize it. I have the benefit of being able to very quickly laugh at my own failures and find the humor in difficult situations. So for instance, with my salon, that pretty much the only thing the last thing I took out of the room was a fire extinguisher, which for some reason makes me laugh. I didn't burn it down. There we go. I did one thing right. But it does take time. After I closed that business, it really took me several months to even get back into a headspace where I could think about moving forward. And a lot of it was complete physical and mental exhaustion. I was just absolutely exhausted. I'd been going full force for years and years with no income, not enough support, a beautiful, wonderful business and amazing clients and employees. But everything that would support me didn't exist. And it was just me supporting with nothing underneath me, just floating. Pretty sucky.
Yeah. It's exhausting.
But it's exhausting. But the more distance I have from it, the more I realize I've learned. And that's how it feels with everything that I've kind of gone through, all of those big failures. One time
at band camp.
One time my sister and I, we had a little design and marketing agency. And we decided we wanted to get a commercial printer. And so she ordered one on the internet from a website where no one had last names. I know. We can just leave it right there. It was a lot. I remember I was crying, trying to get this machine that never worked back onto a freight truck with no lift. Just But now I laugh about it because these are the things that in the moment I'm my life is over. I'm out thousands of dollars. My life is over. It is not over. Yeah. You'll always have the memory.
What'd you do? How'd you get rid of it?
I finally convinced the company where no one had last names to come and pick the thing up.
That's good.
And then at least I didn't have it in a garage.
Yeah.
We didn't get any money back.
Yeah.
Spent a bunch of money on ink and
I'm sorry.
But it's just money. And also a course correction, because sometimes if something is you think something is supposed to happen, it's doesn't Oprah say, if not this, something better?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think that's Oprah.
It must be Oprah.
I'm not sure.
She's so smart.
She is. But
Yeah.
she's, I think also failed.
Oh, definitely.
I mean,
She's
we don't
also
know
failed.
those as many, but
We do, though. Remember when she started her own network called OWN?
mm-hmm.
And it was a major failure for quite a while. She had a film called Beloved that came out that was based on a Toni Morrison novel that did not do well. She spent a lot of money and a lot of time in that. And sometimes, despite our best intentions, it's just not going to work. And it isn't necessarily for circumstances that we control. Sometimes it's just not the right time or just not the right something. But I think that with the right support and knowing that you're never alone in these failures, that's a big part of what Palette is. That's a big part of what like you and I are doing here right now, is making it known that every single person who is out there feeling like they're a piece of crap because they did something wrong or something isn't working or they don't have the clients or they don't have the revenue or they can't figure out what to do next, join the club. It's okay.
Yeah.
We're all here. And someone might have an idea that will help you out of your situation, and you might have an idea that will help them out of theirs. And like that's what Palette's about. That's what connection is about. That's what community is about to me. That's really it.
Bada bang.
Mm-hmm. And I always need more friends to talk about true crime podcasts and like sports.
What are you listening to these days?
Honestly, the only podcast I really listen to that's in the true crime realm is called Trust Me, and it's about cults.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible.
Have you ever been a part of a cult?
I've been rejected from Scientology officially.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like parallel to NXIVM. I had a lot of really good friends who were a part of it. And so I know enough to know that it is good that I didn't join. Yeah. Very, very good.
What is it about cults?
What I think is so cool about cults is that there is a fine line between good leadership and cultiness.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to always stay on the right side of that line.
Mm. So are you saying Palette could be a cult?
I did have someone ask me if Palette was a cult before.
Mm-hmm.
I've had many people ask me, but it's not. Because first of all, there's no sleep deprivation. There's no food restriction. There's no like overbearing leader. There's no separation from your families. I can keep going on all these cult things.
But there's also food.
But we do have food.
Yes. Have you learned anything in business this week? It's Monday. Let's see. We're supposed to share a serious business lesson.
I feel like I never stop learning.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the business lesson I've learned this week is kind of a life lesson too. And it's that if we give grace to everyone we're interacting with, like if you get a difficult email or you have to send a difficult email, if you always give whatever the person on the other end of this situation is the benefit of the doubt, that they're in it for the same reasons you are and that they want to come to a positive solution, that is always the best way to be. You're probably not going to have a bad scenario if you give that other person the benefit of the doubt, let them prove who they are, stay who you are, and then the right will happen.
I like that. Give others grace and also give ourselves some grace.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm learning that. Yeah. It's a lot easier to give other people grace than it is to do it for ourselves, isn't it?
Yes.
Is that because we're women?
I don't know if it's because we're women or if it's because of something else. I'm also an oldest child. Like, I don't know. Or is it my personality type? Is it, I don't know.
Maybe it's because we're so pale.
Maybe it's because we have no souls. Jokes. Okay. Is there anything else we should talk about? We talked about a lot. Is there any?
We did talk about a lot.
Yeah. Cool. Marcella, thank you so much for being a part of the Seriously Connected podcast.
Thank you. I like being seriously connected with you.
Thank you. Right back at you.
Thank you.
And thank you to our listeners. For more information, or if you'd like to learn more about Marcella and the Palette community, you can head to the link in our show notes.